February 2nd marks the celebrations of Imbolc Candlemas and Ground Hog Day. And these are all festivals and celebrations that have to do with the returning of the light, the return of spring, of rebirth and renewal. And today on Gently Being, I'm going to be sharing some ideas for how you may want to honor this time. Hi, welcome to Gently Being. Imbolc is a Sabbath that is celebrated by pagans and Wiccans, and it's an ancient Celtic tradition. This is a time for celebrating the return of spring and bidding adieu to winter. The light has returned to us, our days are getting longer. We want to make time and space to honor that, to welcome it in, to thank it. And this is also, depending on where you live, a time where you may see just the very beginning hints of spring returning. I know where I am, it's a little more north, so there aren't too many signs of that, but the days are getting longer, there's more sun, and we know that spring is on its way. Candlemas in the Christian tradition is the celebration of Jesus being presented at the temple, and it's 40 days after his birth. This is also a time that reflects on the return of light and Jesus being the light for the world, and there's a very strong focus on candles and candlelight for that celebration. And Ground Hog Day is a folk tradition that has a groundhog come out on February 2nd, and depending on whether it sees its shadow or not, it informs us if we're going to be having a lot more winter or if spring is truly on its way. So as you can see, the connection between all these is a focus on light and spring, renewal and rebirth. And the ideas I'm going to be presenting going forward all have to do with these themes. As you may be able to guess, one of the things that you can do to honor this time of February 2nd, the return of spring and the return of light, is to do a really deep spring clean. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be your traditional notion of a spring cleaning, of, dusting everything off and switching your wardrobe a bit and the bedding, because this really depends on where you live. I know for me, it's not really time for that sort of spring cleaning, but instead it can be a focus on doing a cleansing of the space where you may do your prayers or your meditations or your altar spaces, focusing in on maybe cleaning them, cleansing them, and maybe setting them up for this new season that we're moving into. I know for myself, I don't really have much on one of the spaces that I tend to use to pray or meditate in front of, because it's sort of in that transitional phase post Christmas / Yule time and moving into the springtime. So this is a time where I can focus on cleaning up this space, cleansing this space of some of the energy that's around it, and setting it up for the new season that's coming forward. With this focus on the return of light and the longer sunlight that we have and that is coming to us as we go forward, this is a wonderful time to say a prayer to the returning light, or to do a meditation focused on the light that is returning to us. And it can even just be as simple as expressing some gratitude for the sun as it shines down on us, brings us some more light, and is helping to fuel this rebirth and this renewal that's happening in the world all around us. February 2nd is the time to honor the Celtic goddess Brigitte. And Brigitte is a goddess of fertility, birth, renewal, rebirth, also fire, smithing, and poetry. And as you can see, this is tied to the themes that we've been talking about for February 2nd. In the Christian tradition, February 2nd marks the feast day of Saint Brigitte, or Saint Brigitte, and some claim that Saint Brigitte is a Christianization of this earlier Celtic goddess. For Saint Brigitte, there are numerous miracles that are associated with her, and there's a lot of myth and legend that is focused around her life. I think it's important that on February 2nd we take some time to honor this feminine energy, and one way to do this is to craft a Brigitte or Saint Brigitte cross that looks like this. And I'm going to share some links below on some people who share how you can do this, a step-by-step guide on how to do one. And that will bring us to our next idea, because you can use this cross for an altar space. So I just have a little altar space set up here in one of the hallways of my apartments, and it includes this little sheep planter that I already had, and the sheep representing that return to spring and rebirth. And I already had a nice aloe vera plant in it, so I kept it because, again, that's life springing forth, life growing. I also have some Emily Dickinson here and a book on fairies because, as I mentioned, Brigitte is associated with poetry, but also with fairies. I have some candles set up, and they're in the colors of red, green, and white, and those are the colors associated with Imbolc. And then also I have a cauldron here because Brigitte is associated also with a goddess of wells and springs, and then the holding of water. I just want to note that it's important that if you have any candles that you always stay with them when they're lit and keep them in a safe space. And that brings us to our next part. Candles. They are very much associated with February 2nd and part of the rituals and ceremonies that you may choose to have. You may decide to bless the candles that are in your house. In the Christian tradition, some churches allow you after the Mass to bring your candles, and a priest will bless them, but you can also bless them yourself within your own home and apartment if that's something you would like to do, and you can just say a little blessing over them and thank them for bringing in light into the darkness. Also, a wonderful thing you can do is to carry a candle, or if there's more than one person in the household, you can all go together carrying candles and bring light to each room that is in your home or an apartment. And lastly, something that I really love to do for February 2nd is to just use candlelight and no overhead light. Of course, safely, always being with the candles and making sure you have them in a proper place and not near anything too flammable. And it's really lovely to have a candle-lit dinner. And now for some food ideas. I have my lucky apron on that features the colors of red, green, and white. And I have two suggestions that you may want to consider. First up, you may want to think about baking some bread. One of the reasons is Imbolc is also associated with dairy and using some dairy in your baking because it's a celebration of the sheep giving milk again and being able to make some products that feature that in them. So that's why some of the Imbolc recipes for Imbolc bread can be a perfect thing to do, and you may want to consider making a braided bread, which is a symbol that is also associated with the goddess Brigitte. And the three pieces that you braid together are to represent the maiden and the mother and the crone all coming together, as the goddess Brigitte represents the entirety of the feminine life and roles that can be played. Next up, you may also want to consider having pancakes or crepes for dinner or breakfast or lunch. And that is a tradition that in France, February 2nd, Candlemas, is crepe day. And they often will make and eat crepes. And I think it is a fun tradition to continue if you like those foods. And I like to actually have breakfast for dinner on February 2nd by candlelight, and it is a way to embrace the rituals and traditions associated with February 2nd in a really yummy way. I hope the ideas that I've shared have inspired you to honor and celebrate February 2nd in a way that speaks and works for you. I know where I live, actually I'm looking out my window right now and it's snowing, so spring feels very far way off. But February 2nd is really a lovely time for just honoring and thanking the light that's continuing to grow each day, and for the spring that is either just starting to arrive or about to arrive. That being said, I still think it's wonderful and important to honor winter while we're still in it and to be thankful for the snow that is falling. So I hope you will choose to do something for February 2nd, or maybe even just take some time to research more about the traditions and celebrations that take place on that day. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below and hit the bell so you always know when there's a new video. Thanks so much for spending time with Gently Being.